I am Joshua, 31, and at my own brother's wedding, my family labeled me a non-priority guest right on my place card. Before I tell you about the explosive moment I finally took my power back and the absolute chaos that followed, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The ballroom of the Whitmore estate was exactly what you would expect for a wedding that cost more than my entire life savings. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting a warm, golden glow over 200 guests. Waiters in crisp white jackets moved silently through the crowd, carrying silver trays of champagne. The air smelled of expensive perfume and fresh white orchids. It was a picture of absolute perfection, a masterpiece carefully curated by my mother, Eleanor, and my younger brother, Mason. I stood near the entrance of the grand dining room, holding a small, heavy piece of cream-colored linen cardstock between my fingers. The calligraphy was elegant, embossed in gold ink. It had my name on it, Joshua, but it was the line printed directly underneath my name that made the blood rush to my ears. Non-priority guest. I stared at the letters until they blurred. Non-priority, like a shipping label, like a piece of misplaced luggage. Every other card on the seating chart display just had a name and a table number. Mine was the only one with a classification. I looked up and scanned the room. I saw table 1 right by the dance floor, draped in lush floral arrangements. That was the family table. I saw my mother, my father Robert, and my older brother Carter already making their way there, laughing and greeting the wealthiest guests in the room. I looked down at my card again. Table 14. I turned around, trying to find table 14. It was shoved all the way in the back corner, right next to the swinging doors of the catering kitchen. A table meant for last-minute plus-ones and distant acquaintances. Suddenly, I smelled the unmistakable scent of my mother's Chanel perfume. Eleanor materialized at my elbow. She wore a tailored silver gown and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She leaned in close, her voice a perfectly measured, icy whisper. That means no seat at the family table, Joshua. Don't make a fuss. Just find your seat and be quiet. She patted my arm, a gesture that looked maternal to anyone watching from a distance, but felt like a warning strike. Then she turned and glided back toward table 1. Leaving me standing there holding my own degradation in my hand. I didn't make a fuss. I didn't yell. Something much colder and much more permanent settled inside my chest. For 31 years, I had been the invisible middle child. I was the school counselor with the modest salary, sandwiched between Carter, the golden boy financial advisor, and Mason, the hotshot corporate lawyer. I had spent my entire life shrinking myself to make room for their egos. I had swallowed every insult, every skipped birthday, every family vacation I was conveniently left out of. I did it because I believed that if I just loved them hard enough, eventually, they would love me back. But looking at that card, the illusion shattered. They didn't just overlook me. They actively despised me. They went out of their way to print my worthlessness on a piece of heavy cardstock for anyone to see. I reached into the inside pocket of my suit jacket. My fingers brushed against a thick, craft paper envelope. Inside that envelope was a certified bank check for $10,000. It was my gift to Mason and his new bride, Chloe. That money was supposed to be my own college fund to go back and get my PhD. I had skipped meals, worked double shifts, and lived like a ghost for 6 months to save that money. I brought it tonight thinking it would finally prove my devotion to this family. I thought it would buy me a seat at the table. I walked past the dining tables. I ignored the confused looks from a few guests who noticed my expression. I walked straight out of the grand dining room and down the marble hallway to the reception foyer. Against a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows sat the gift table. It was draped in white satin and piled high with beautifully wrapped boxes and thick envelopes. I found my craft paper envelope tucked between 2 massive silver gift boxes. I picked it up. The weight of it felt different in my hand now. It didn't feel like a gift anymore. It felt like ransom money I was refusing to pay. I ripped the flap open, pulled out the $10,000 check, and slid it into my wallet. Then, I took the place card, the beautiful, gold-embossed card that labeled me non-priority guest, and I placed it gently on the satin tablecloth exactly where my envelope had been. "Since I'm just a courtesy," I said quietly to the empty room. "So is this." I turned my back on the ballroom, the chandeliers, and the family that never wanted me. I pushed through the heavy glass doors of the estate and walked out into the cool night air. The parking lot was filled with luxury vehicles. I walked past a gleaming black Rolls-Royce and a bright red Porsche, heading toward my 10-year-old sedan parked at the very edge of the gravel lot. I didn't make it to my car before I heard the heavy, frantic footsteps on the gravel behind me. "Joshua, what the hell are you doing?" It was Mason. He had jogged out of the venue, his expensive tuxedo jacket flapping open. Right behind him was my mother, Eleanor, struggling to walk fast in her heels, and my father, Robert, trailing behind them looking utterly exhausted. I stopped with my hand on my car door handle and turned to face them. "You can't just leave," Mason snapped, his face flushed with anger. "People are taking their seats. You are embarrassing us." "I'm embarrassing you?" I asked, keeping my voice dangerously low. "You printed non-priority guest on my place card, Mason. You put me by the kitchen doors." Eleanor stepped forward, her eyes flashing. "We had limited space at the main tables, Joshua. Mason's new in-laws are very important people. We couldn't exactly put you next to the CEO of a real estate empire, could we? What would you even talk about? Your little school counseling job? Don't be so dramatic." I looked at my mother, truly looked at her. I saw the pure, unadulterated snobbery in her eyes. Then I looked at Mason, who was glaring at me like I was a beggar ruining his aesthetic. Finally, I looked at my father. Robert just stared at his own shoes, unwilling to defend his own son. "You wanted my money," I said, my voice steady. "But you didn't want me. So I took my check back. You can keep the place card." Mason's jaw dropped. "You took the money back? Are you insane? You gave that to us." "I gave it to a brother," I said. "I don't have one of those." I opened my car door, got in, and started the engine. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I watched them in my rearview mirror. My mother was screaming something I couldn't hear, and Mason was kicking the gravel. That was the moment everything broke. But I had no idea that the Real explosion was still waiting for me the next morning. To understand how we ended up in that parking lot, I have to take you back 6 months. I need you to understand the foundation this family was built on. It wasn't built on love. It was built on a strict hierarchy, and I was firmly at the bottom. It started on a Sunday evening in early spring. My mother had summoned all of us to the family home for a major announcement. The house was spotless, smelling of lemon polish and roasted lamb. Carter sat on the sofa, swirling a glass of expensive scotch. Mason stood by the fireplace, practically vibrating with smug energy. I sat in a stiff armchair in the corner, holding a glass of tap water. Mason cleared his throat. "Chloe and I are engaged," he announced, holding up his phone to show a picture of a diamond ring that looked heavy enough to sink a boat. Eleanor screamed with joy. She rushed forward, throwing her arms around Mason. My father clapped him on the back. Carter raised his glass in a toast. I stood up, genuinely happy for my younger brother. "Congratulations, Mason. That's incredible news." Mason gave me a tight, polite nod. "Thanks, Josh." Over the next few weeks, the wedding planning consumed my mother's entire existence. Chloe's father was Charles, a massive commercial real estate developer. This wasn't just a wedding to my mother. It was a corporate merger. It was her chance to cement the family's status among the elite. One afternoon, I was scrolling through social media during my lunch break at the high school where I worked. A photo popped up on my feed. It was Mason, Carter, and 4 other men I barely recognized from Mason's law firm. They were all holding personalized whiskey decanters, standing on a golf course. The caption read, "The groomsmen, squad complete." I stopped breathing for a second. I stared at the screen, my older brother and my younger brother smiling together. And I wasn't there. I hadn't even been asked. I swallowed the lump in my throat and sent Mason a quick text. "Saw the groomsmen post. Looks like a great group. Wish I could have been part of it. For hours later, he replied. Chloe's side is huge. Had to make some tough cuts. You'll still be in the family photos, don't worry about it. Tough cuts. I was his brother and I was a tough cut. I put my phone face down on my desk and rubbed my eyes. I realized then that I was a spectator in my own family. But the desperate, pathetic part of me, the part that still wanted my mother's approval and my brother's respect, decided I just needed to try harder. I decided I was going to give Mason and Chloe a wedding gift they would never forget. I wanted to hand them something so significant that they would have to see me. They would have to acknowledge that I was a supportive, successful part of this family. I set a goal, $10,000. For a corporate lawyer like Mason, that might be a casual bonus. For a public school counselor like me, it was a mountain. I had a small savings account, about $4,000, which I had slowly built up as a college fund. I wanted to go back to school to get my doctorate in psychology. I drained that account the next day. That left $6,000 to save in 6 months. $1,000 a month. I stopped buying groceries and started living on the cheapest bulk rice and beans I could find. I canceled every subscription I had. I didn't turn on the heat in my apartment until I could see my own breath in the air. I took on weekend shifts at a local community center, counseling at-risk youth. My best friend and colleague Elijah noticed. He sat across from me in the staff break room one Tuesday, watching me eat a sad container of leftover plain pasta. "You look exhausted, man," Elijah said, frowning. "You're working yourself into the ground. What's going on?" "Just saving up for Mason's wedding," I lied smoothly. "You know how it is." Elijah shook his head. "Joshua, you're a good guy, but you're killing yourself for people who don't even ask how your day was. I'm just saying, make sure you're not setting yourself on fire to keep them warm." I brushed him off, but his words haunted me. Still, every time I deposited a few $100s into the bank, I imagined the look on my mother's face when Mason opened that envelope. I imagined her finally looking at me with pride. I was buying a fantasy, paying for it with my own health and sanity. As the wedding drew closer, the tasks piled up. Because I wasn't in the wedding party, Eleanor decided I was the designated unpaid staff. 3 days before the wedding, at 8 p.m., my phone rang. I had just walked into my apartment after a 14-hour workday. It was Eleanor. "Joshua, the custom tablecloths were delivered to the wrong vendor warehouse across town. Mason is stressed out of his mind. Go pick them up and bring them to my house tonight. We need them for the setup tomorrow." She didn't ask. She ordered. I got back in my car and drove an hour and a half through heavy rain to an industrial park, loaded 4 heavy boxes into my trunk, and drove another hour to my parents' house in the wealthy suburbs. It was nearly midnight when I dragged the boxes through their front door. I walked into the kitchen, exhausted, my clothes damp. Eleanor was sitting at the island, holding a glass of wine, FaceTiming with Mason and Chloe. "Oh, the linens are here," Eleanor said casually to the phone, barely glancing at me. "Everything is perfect, sweetie. Go to sleep." She hung up. "I got them," I said quietly, wiping rain off my forehead. "Just leave them in the hall," she said, already walking toward the stairs. "Make sure you lock the door on your way out. Not a thank you. Not a glass of water." Before I left, my Uncle Wyatt, Eleanor's brother, walked out of the living room. He had been staying in the guest room for the week. He patted my shoulder. "Good job, kid," Wyatt said. "Just keep your head down. Your mother is under a lot of pressure with this wedding. Don't make waves. You know how Mason gets. We all just have to do our part to keep the peace." Keep the peace. That was my family's favorite phrase. It meant, let us walk all over you and don't complain about the footprints. The reality of my position became undeniable the night before the wedding at the rehearsal dinner. It was held at an exclusive downtown steakhouse. The main table was a massive, polished mahogany block in the center of the private room. I arrived 10 minutes early, dressed in my only good suit. I walked toward the main table, looking for my name. Carter was seated next to Mason. Eleanor and Robert were next to Chloe's parents. The groomsmen, the bridesmaids, they all had seats at the center of the room. I circled the table twice. Nothing. "Excuse me," a voice said behind me. It was Julian, the high-end wedding planner Eleanor had hired. He looked at his clipboard, his expression uncomfortable. "Joshua, right? Your seat is over here." He led me away from the center of the room, past a decorative partition, to a small, cramped table wedged near the waiter station and the kitchen doors. It was the overflow table. I was seated with a distant cousin who kept talking about his gout, and the teenage daughter of one of the bridesmaids. I sat there for 2 hours watching my family celebrate from a distance. I watched Carter make a brilliant toast that had the whole room roaring with laughter. I watched my father buy a round of expensive cigars for the groomsmen. At one point, Charles, Chloe's father, walked past our table heading to the restroom. He paused, looking at me, then looked back at the main table. Later, when the room quieted down, I heard Charles ask my mother a question. "Eleanor, where did Joshua end up? Did we run out of space at the main table?" Charles asked, his voice booming slightly. Eleanor didn't miss a beat. She offered a smooth, dismissive laugh. "Oh, you know Joshua. He's a bit of an introvert. He prefers quieter settings away from the chaos. We just want him to be comfortable." I gripped my fork so hard my knuckles turned white. She was writing my narrative for me, painting me as a socially awkward recluse to justify hiding me away. I looked up and met Julian, the wedding planner's eyes across the room. He was standing by the bar watching the exchange. When he looked at me, there was a flash of something sharp in his eyes. Pity, and something else. I didn't know it then, but Julian was the only person in that room who knew exactly what my family was doing. The morning of the wedding, the sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. I woke up at dawn, ironed my shirt, and practiced my smile in the bathroom mirror. I kept telling myself today was about Mason. I patted my jacket pocket to make sure the $10,000 envelope was secure. I arrived at the Whitmore estate 3 hours before the ceremony. I carried a small box of expensive pastries I had bought from a bakery across town, intending to bring them to the groomsmen's suite as a peace offering. I walked down the plush carpeted hallway to the Roosevelt suite. I could hear loud music, laughter, and the clinking of bottles from inside. I knocked on the heavy oak door. The door opened a few inches. It was Dylan, Mason's best man, a guy who had bullied me relentlessly in high school and apparently never grew out of it. He looked me up and down, blocking the doorway. "Hey, Josh," Dylan said, not sounding welcoming at all. "Hey, Dylan. I brought some breakfast for the guys. Is Mason in there?" Dylan shifted his weight. Yeah, he is. But your mom gave strict orders. Bridal party and VIPs only right now. The photographer is getting the getting ready shots. We don't want to clutter the background." I stood there, holding a box of pastries, feeling like a fool. "I'm his brother, Dylan. Take it up with Eleanor, man. I'm just the bouncer." He shut the door in my face. I pulled out my phone and called my mother. She answered on the third ring, sounding breathless. "Joshua, what is it? We are extremely busy." "Mom, Dylan won't let me into the suite. I just wanted to see Mason before the ceremony." "Joshua, please," she sighed, the irritation thick in her voice. "This is a very tightly scheduled morning. Important people only in the suites right now for the photos. Go to the lobby, get yourself a coffee, and wait until the ushers seat the guests. Don't cause a scene." She hung up. I stood in the hallway for a long time. The rejection wasn't subtle anymore. It was a locked door. I walked down to the lobby, threw the pastries into a trash can, and sat on a leather sofa for 2 hours, watching strangers arrive for my brother's wedding. The ceremony took place on the estate's sprawling back lawn, overlooking a pristine lake. An archway of white roses framed the altar. A string quartet played softly in the background. When the ushers opened the seating area, I walked toward the front row. The front row on the groom's side had 4 reserved signs: Eleanor, Robert, Carter, and Carter's date. There was no 5th chair. An usher, a young kid I didn't recognize, checked his list. "Joshua, you're in row 5, sir. Right this way. Row 5. I walked past 4 rows of extended family, wealthy business partners of Charles, and college friends of Mason. I sat down on the edge of the 5th row. The view of the altar was mostly blocked by the tall hats of the women sitting in front of me. The ceremony began. Mason looked like he stepped out of a magazine. Chloe was stunning. When it came time for the vows, Mason took a microphone. He spoke smoothly, projecting his voice for the crowd. "Chloe," he said, looking deeply into her eyes, "my family means everything to me. My parents taught me the value of unconditional love. My brother Carter taught me loyalty. And today, I promise to bring those values into our new family. Unconditional love. Loyalty." He didn't even say my name. I was sitting 40 feet away, entirely erased from his history. I looked across the aisle. Charles, Chloe's father, was sitting in the front row. He turned his head slightly, scanning the groom's side of the aisle. His sharp, calculating eyes bypassed the first 4 rows and landed directly on me in row 5. His brow furrowed slightly. He knew family dynamics, and he knew something was very wrong with this picture. I held my head up and stared straight back. After the ceremony, the guests flowed into the grand ballroom for the reception. This brings us back to that moment. The moment I found the seating chart. I walked up to the easel, looking for my name. The list was alphabetical. Ashford, Carter Table 1 Ashford, Eleanor Table 1 Ashford, Robert, Table 1 Ashford, Joshua Table 14, non-priority guest. When I saw it, the air left my lungs. It wasn't just an oversight. It wasn't a mistake. Someone had to type those words into a spreadsheet. Someone had to send it to a printer. Someone had to approve the proof. I walked to Table 14. It was as bad as I thought. Next to the kitchen doors, drafty, and vibrating every time a waiter pushed through. I sat down. The other seats at the table were empty. I was alone at the island of the unwanted. That was when my mother came over. That was when she leaned down, smelling of Chanel, and whispered that I had no seat at the family table, telling me to be quiet and not make a fuss. I watched her walk away, her silver dress catching the light. I watched my father laughing at table 1. I watched Carter clinking glasses with a local politician. I realized then that my $10,000 gift wouldn't change anything. If I gave them that money, they would take it, cash it, and still leave me at table 14. They would view it as a tribute, a tax I owed them for the privilege of breathing the same air. Dinner service began. I watched the synchronized waiters march out of the kitchen doors right next to my table. They headed straight for table 1, carrying silver platters of butter-poached lobster tail and thick cuts of Wagyu beef. The smell of truffle butter filled the room. A few moments later, a young waiter named Luke stopped at my table. He looked incredibly nervous. He set a plain white plate down in front of me. On it was a single, dry, overcooked chicken breast, a scoop of instant mashed potatoes, and some limp green beans. I looked at the plate, then looked up at Luke. "Excuse me," I said quietly. "Is this the same meal everyone else is having?" Luke swallowed hard, avoiding my eyes. "No, sir. I'm sorry. The event planner gave us specific instructions. Table 14 receives the standard vendor and non-priority meal package. It's a reduced menu. A reduced menu. They didn't just hide me. They cheaped out on my dinner. While Mason and Carter feasted on lobster bought with Chloe's father's money, my own family had explicitly ordered me the cheapest food legally allowable. "Who gave the instruction?" I asked, my voice calm but hard. "The groom, sir," Luke whispered, terrified. "He sent an email modifying the catering order just for this seat. That was it. That was the final chain snapping." I didn't feel sad anymore. I didn't feel like the unloved middle child. I felt a surge of pure, icy clarity. I touched the outside of my suit pocket, feeling the outline of the $10,000 envelope. 6 months of starvation. 6 months of double shifts. All for a brother who wouldn't even pay for me to have a decent steak at his wedding. I stood up. I took my linen napkin and dropped it directly on top of the dry chicken breast. I turned my back on table 14. I walked across the ballroom floor. The music was loud, People were laughing, and no one was looking at me. They never looked at me. I walked to the gift table. I took my check. I left the insulting place card, and I walked out. The night air hit my face like cold water, snapping me fully awake. My dress shoes crunched against the gravel of the Whitmore Estate parking lot. I walked past the line of luxury cars, a silver Rolls-Royce, a cherry red Porsche, a sleek black Mercedes. They belonged to Charles's business partners, to Mason's senior law firm partners, to people who measured human worth in square footage and stock options. At the very end of the lot, parked near a dumpster, was my 10-year-old sedan. It wasn't much, but it was mine and it was paid for. I grabbed the door handle, but before I could pull it open, the heavy wooden doors of the venue slammed open. Joshua! I turned around. Mason was marching across the gravel, his expensive tuxedo jacket flying open. His face was a mask of furious indignation. Right behind him, my mother Eleanor was trying to keep up, her silver gown dragging in the dirt. Carter was jogging beside them, holding a half-empty glass of scotch. My father, Robert, hung back near the entrance, a dark silhouette refusing to step fully into the conflict. "What do you think you're doing?" Mason snarled as he reached me. He pointed a finger at my chest. "You leave your cheap little card on the gift table and just walk out? Chloe's parents are inside. People are asking questions. Tell them the truth, Mason," I said, my voice dangerously calm. I leaned back against my car. "Tell them you labeled your own brother a non-priority guest and ordered him the vendor meal." Eleanor pushed past Mason, her eyes blazing. "You are ruining your brother's perfect day. We made accommodations for you, Joshua. We let you come. And this is how you repay us? By stealing your gift back. Accommodations." I let out a harsh laugh. The absurdity of it was suffocating. "You treated me like a stray dog you were forced to let into the house. And as for the gift, that envelope had $10,000 in it, Mom." That stopped them. Eleanor's mouth dropped open. Mason blinked, the anger on his face flickering into sudden, desperate shock. $10,000? Mason stammered, taking a half step forward. "Yeah, 6 months of savings. My college fund. I gave up everything to show you that I cared," I said, staring directly into Mason's eyes. I wanted him to feel the weight of what he had thrown away. "But the waiter told me you personally downgraded my meal. You couldn't even spare $50 for a plate of food for your own brother. So you definitely don't deserve $10,000 of my blood and sweat." Carter stepped up, swirling his scotch. He put on his best reasonable older brother voice, the one he used to close financial deals. "Come on, Josh. Don't be petty. It was a logistical error. Emotions are high. Just hand the envelope to Mason. Come back inside, and we'll laugh about this tomorrow." "A logistical error?" I snapped, my calm finally cracking. "My name was printed with a classification. That takes planning. You want the envelope, Carter? You write him a check. You're the golden boy making 6 figures. Eleanor's face twisted into something ugly and venomous. The mask of the elegant society mother completely melted away. "This is exactly why you're a failure, Joshua," she hissed, her voice dripping with contempt. "You are selfish and small-minded. You have a pathetic salary, a pathetic job, and you are jealous of Mason. You always have been. If you were half the man your brothers are, you wouldn't be sitting at the back table." I looked at my mother, the woman who birthed me. I felt the last lingering thread of attachment to her snap and wither away. "I'm not jealous," I said quietly. "I'm free." I opened my car door and slid into the driver's seat. Mason lunged forward, grabbing the edge of the open door. "Joshua, wait. We need that. I mean, you can't just leave." Mason's voice had lost its arrogance. It sounded reedy, almost panicked. I looked at his manicured hands gripping my car door. "Let go, Mason, or I'll drive off with your fingers." He let go. I slammed the door, locked it, and started the engine. The headlights illuminated my family standing in the gravel. Angry, shocked, and entirely toxic. I put the car in drive and drove away, leaving the Whitmore estate and 31 years of abuse in my rearview mirror. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my cheap living room couch in the dark, staring at the ceiling, the $10,000 check sitting on the coffee table in front of me. I felt a strange mixture of profound grief and electric, terrifying liberation. When the sun came up, my phone began to buzz. And it didn't stop. The text storm had begun. My family had officially gone on the offensive to control the narrative. Mom, 8:14 a.m. You humiliated us. Chloe's father was asking why the police didn't need to be called for a theft. You are dead to me until you apologize and return what you stole. Carter, 8:30 a.m. Real mature. Josh, you ruined Mason's morning after brunch. You're going to pay for this. Grow up. Aunt Sarah, 9 a.m. I heard you had a mental breakdown at the reception and tried to steal from the bride. You need psychiatric help, Joshua. I scrolled through the messages, my stomach churning. They were twisting the story. They were painting me as a lunatic, a thief, a jealous loser who threw a tantrum. Eleanor was probably working the phones right now, calling every relative and family friend, spinning a web of lies to protect her perfect image. I set the phone down. A wave of doubt hit me. The core fear that had controlled my life crept into my mind. Maybe I am the problem. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe if I was just more successful, they would have respected me. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. I almost didn't open it, but the preview text caught my eye. Unknown, Joshua, this is Julian, the wedding planner. I sat up straight and unlocked the phone. Julian. I saw what happened last night. I've been doing high-end weddings for 10 years, and I have never seen a family treat a blood relative the way yours treated you. It made me sick to my stomach. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Julian, they are going to lie about this. They are going to tell people it was a mistake or that it was my fault or that you're crazy. But I know the truth, and I have proof. Proof. I quickly typed back. What kind of proof? 3 dots appeared on the screen as he typed. The seconds dragged by. Julian, I kept the email threads. The instructions Mason and your mother gave me regarding your seating, your meal, and your status. They fought me on it when I told them it was cruel. I have it all in writing. My breath hitched. They had put it in writing. Julian, I'm breaking a massive non-disclosure clause by doing this. I could lose my business if Charles finds out. But I can't let them gaslight you. Meet me at the coffee shop on 4th Street in an hour. Come alone. I looked up from the glowing screen of my phone. The doubt that had been suffocating me vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating rage. They wanted to play a game of reputation. They wanted to destroy my name to protect theirs. I grabbed my keys and the $10,000 check. I wasn't going to hide. I was going to get the ammunition I needed, and I was going to burn their perfect, fake world to the ground. I pulled into the parking lot of a small, independent coffee shop on 4th Street. It was far enough away from the wealthy suburbs that I knew I wouldn't run into anyone from my family. The bell above the door chimed as I walked in. The place smelled of roasted beans and rain. I spotted Julian immediately. He was sitting in a back booth, wearing a dark trench coat, staring into a black coffee he hadn't touched. A thick manila folder rested on the table in front of him. I slid into the booth across from him. He looked up, and I saw real exhaustion in his eyes. He didn't offer a polite greeting. He just pushed the folder across the scratched wooden table. I've worked with difficult families before, Joshua, Julian said, his voice low. I've dealt with bridezillas, demanding mothers and arrogant grooms. But this was different. This was calculated cruelty. I opened the folder. Inside was a stack of printed email chains between Julian, my brother Mason, and my mother Eleanor. The subject line of the top email read, "Final seating chart, urgent." I started reading. The first email was from Julian, suggesting that the groom's brother should naturally be seated at table 1 with the parents, or at the very least, table 2 with the extended family. Beneath that was Mason's reply. I read the words, and the air in my lungs turned to ice. Julian, no. Joshua is a courtesy invite. He is a high school counselor with a pathetic salary, and Chloe's family is bringing executives and investors. I am a corporate lawyer about to marry into real estate royalty. I am not having Joshua sitting at the main table looking like a charity case and talking about public school budgets. Put him at the back. Label his card so the catering staff knows not to serve him the premium package. I'm not wasting $100 steak on him. I gripped the paper. My brother didn't just hide me. He actively despised my existence. But it got worse. I flipped to the next page. Julian had pushed back, warning them that labeling a guest non-priority was highly unorthodox and deeply offensive. Then came the reply from my mother. Julian, you are paid to execute our vision, not to give family therapy. Do exactly as Mason asked. Put Joshua at the overflow table by the kitchen. Don't worry about him making a scene. He will sit there quietly. He always does. He knows his place in this family. He knows his place. I read that sentence 3 times. My mother didn't just agree with Mason. She weaponized my lifelong obedience. She banked on my trauma. She knew I would swallow the humiliation because I had spent 31 years swallowing it to keep the peace. I tried to stop them, Julian said quietly, breaking the silence. I told them it was a massive liability, both socially and professionally. But Mason threatened to ruin my business's reputation if I didn't comply. I printed these out this morning before deleting them from my server. I'm handing them to you. What you do with them is your business. I closed the folder. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The suffocating weight of self-doubt that had haunted me my entire life was completely gone. I finally saw my family clearly. They weren't just snobs. They were toxic, empty people who used my pain to elevate their own fragile egos. Thank you, Julian, I said, sliding the folder into my bag. You have no idea what you just gave me. I think I gave you your life back, Julian replied softly. I walked out of that coffee shop with a very clear plan. I wasn't going to yell on the phone. I wasn't going to send an angry text. I was going to give them exactly what they loved the most. A family gathering. I sat in my car, pulled out my phone, and opened the family group chat. I typed a single, carefully crafted message. Mom, Mason, Carter. I've had time to think. I want to clear the air. Let's do Sunday brunch at Mom's house tomorrow. 10 a.m. Please ask Chloe to be there too. We need to settle this as a family. The replies came almost instantly. Mom, finally. I am glad you are coming to your senses. Joshua, I will make my famous quiche. See you at 10. Carter, good man. Bring the check. They thought I was surrendering. They thought the invisible middle child was crawling back to apologize and hand over his savings to buy back their fake affection. I set my phone on the passenger seat, looked at the manila folder, and started the engine. Sunday morning arrived with bright, deceptive sunshine. I pulled up to my parents' sprawling suburban house exactly at 10 o'clock. The lawn was perfectly manicured. The massive oak front doors looked like the entrance to a fortress. I walked up the steps, the manila folder tucked firmly under my arm. Eleanor opened the door before I even knocked. She was wearing a cashmere sweater, her hair perfectly styled, radiating the gracious, forgiving mother persona she had perfected over decades. Joshua, she sighed, pulling me into a stiff hug that smelled of expensive hairspray. I'm so glad you decided to be mature about this. I didn't hug her back. I just stepped inside. The dining room table was set with fine china and crystal juice glasses. The smell of baked quiche and fresh coffee filled the air. Carter was sitting at the end of the table, scrolling through his phone, checking the stock market. Mason sat across from him, leaning back in his chair with a look of supreme arrogance. Next to Mason was Chloe. She looked slightly pale, her hands folded tightly in her lap. My father, Robert, stood by the window, staring out at the driveway, avoiding everyone's eyes. Sit down, Josh, Mason said, gesturing to a chair like a king granting an audience to a peasant. Let's get this over with. I have a tea time at noon. I took my seat. I placed the manila folder on the table right next to my coffee cup. Nobody paid attention to it. So, Carter started, setting his phone face down. We all agree things got out of hand at the reception. Tensions were high, but taking back a wedding gift in front of Chloe's parents was a massive lapse in judgment. Josh, you made Mason look bad. I made him look bad? I asked, keeping my voice perfectly level. Yes, you did, Eleanor chimed in, pouring coffee with steady hands. We just want an apology, Joshua, and we expect you to return the envelope to Mason. We can put this whole ugly incident behind us and act like a real family again. I looked around the table. They were so confident in their script. They had played this game for 30 years, and I had always played my part perfectly. But the script had changed. Before I apologize, I said, folding my hands on the table, I just have one question. I want to understand what happened. Who exactly made the decision to print non-priority guest on my place card? And who decided to order me the vendor meal? The room went dead silent. The clinking of silverware stopped. Mason let out a short, dismissive laugh. Oh, come on. Are we really still talking about a piece of cardboard? It was a catering mix-up. The wedding planner, Julian, got confused with the tier categories. It was a mistake. I looked at Chloe. Is that what he told you, Chloe? That it was a mistake. Chloe shifted uncomfortably. She looked at Mason, then at me. Mason said the planner panicked because the venue was over capacity. He said it had nothing to do with him, right? Mason interjected quickly, a slight edge of panic bleeding into his confident tone. Julian is an idiot. He completely messed up the seating chart. It's over. Move on. I looked at my mother. Mom? Is that your version too? The wedding planner did it. Eleanor lifted her chin defensively. It was a very stressful day, Joshua. Details get lost. You are making a mountain out of a molehill. Now, hand the envelope to your brother and stop this interrogation. I nodded slowly. I gave them every chance to tell the truth. They chose the lie. They chose to gaslight me right to my face, with Chloe sitting right there as a witness. A molehill, I repeated softly. I reached out and rested my hand on the manila folder. That's funny, because Julian didn't seem confused at all when I spoke to him yesterday. Mason's smug expression instantly vanished. The color drained from his face. You talked to Julian? I did, I said, opening the folder. And he gave me a parting gift. I pulled the printed email chains out of the folder and dropped them right in the center of the dining table, next to my mother's perfect quiche. What is this? Carter asked, leaning forward, his brow furrowing. Those are the emails Mason sent to the wedding planner, I said, my voice echoing off the high ceiling of the dining room. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. The truth was loud enough. Chloe reached out with a trembling hand and pulled the top page toward her. Mason lunged across the table to grab it. Give me that. Chloe, don't look at that. It's confidential vendor correspondence. Mason shouted, his voice cracking. I slammed my hand down on the papers before he could pull them away. I looked dead into his eyes. Let her read it, Mason. Chloe pulled the paper free. Her eyes scanned the page. I watched the realization hit her like a physical blow. Her hand flew to her mouth. You called him a courtesy invite, Chloe whispered, her voice shaking. She looked up at Mason, horror written all over her face. You told the planner to hide him because you were ashamed of his salary? Because he's a school counselor. Chloe, baby, listen, it's taken out of context. Mason stammered, holding his hands up defensively. Out of context? I cut in, picking up the second page and holding it up for the entire table to see. How about this one? This is from Mom. I turned to Eleanor, whose face was frozen in a mask of absolute terror. I'll read it out loud for the room, I said, projecting my voice. Do exactly as Mason asked. Put Joshua at the overflow table by the kitchen. He will sit there quietly. He always does. He knows his place in this family. I dropped the paper back onto the table. You didn't make a mistake, I said, looking from my mother to my brother. You planned it. You engineered my humiliation because you wanted a perfect, wealthy aesthetic, and I didn't fit the picture. You wanted my $10,000 college fund, but you didn't even want to feed me the same food as everyone else. Carter picked up the emails, reading them quickly. He threw them back down and rubbed his temples. Jesus, Mason, you actually put this in writing. Carter wasn't mad about the cruelty. He was mad about the sloppy execution. Robert, my father, finally stepped away from the window. He looked at the emails on the table, then looked at my mother. Eleanor, tell me this is a joke. Tell me you didn't write this about our son. Eleanor opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water. Robert, I was trying to manage a crisis. Charles was evaluating us. I had to make sure everything looked perfect for Chloe's family. By treating your own flesh and blood like garbage? Chloe stood up suddenly. Her chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. She looked at Mason with pure disgust. My father is a businessman, Mason. But he raised me to treat the janitor with the same respect as the CEO. If this is how you treat your own brother, what exactly are you going to do to me when I don't fit your perfect image? Chloe, please, we just got married. Mason pleaded, reaching for her hand. She yanked her hand away. Don't touch me. I need to get out of this house. She grabbed her purse and practically ran toward the front door. Mason chased after her, screaming her name. The heavy oak door slammed shut behind them. The dining room was dead silent. Carter stared at the table. Robert sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. Eleanor stood completely frozen, staring at the printed proof of her own toxic soul. I picked up the manila folder. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt lighter than I had in 31 years. You wanted to know my place in this family? I said, looking directly at my mother. My place is out of it. Don't call me. Don't text me. Have a great life with your aesthetic. I turned my back on them and walked out the front door. I walked down the driveway, got into my 10-year-old sedan, and drove away from that house for the very last time. This is the moment that changes everything, the moment I finally took back control of my life. Thank you so much for your patience and for staying with me until now. You've been amazing. Please give this video a like and comment one below to let me know you've made it this far. Not only does this help more people find this story, but it also lets me know that my experiences truly mean something to someone. Your support is my greatest motivation to keep sharing the rest of this journey. The fallout from that Sunday brunch was swift and brutal. I spent the next 3 days in my apartment, ignoring phone calls and emails from unknown numbers. I was finally breathing clean air. On Wednesday evening, my phone rang. The caller ID said it was Carter. I hesitated, then answered. I wanted to see exactly how they were trying to spin this disaster. Josh, Carter said. His voice was smooth, carrying that fake corporate polish he used when he was trying to close a difficult client. Listen, things got incredibly heated on Sunday. I think everyone said things they regret. I didn't say a single thing I regret, Carter, I replied flatly. Carter sighed. A practiced, heavy sound. Look, I get it. Mason was a jerk. Mom was out of line. But you dropping those emails in front of Chloe was a nuclear option, man. You blew up his marriage before the honeymoon even started. Chloe went to stay at her parents' house. Charles is furious. Good, I said. Charles should know exactly who his daughter married. You're missing the big picture here, Joshua. Carter's polished tone slipped, revealing a sharp, desperate edge. This isn't just about Mason. This impacts all of us. You need to call Chloe and smooth this over. Tell her you overreacted. Tell her the emails were a joke. I don't care what you say. Just fix it. I frowned. Carter never cared about Mason's happiness. They competed constantly. Why was he panicking? Why do you care so much, Carter? Mason dug his own grave. Because Charles was going to introduce me to the board of directors at his real estate firm next week. Carter yelled, finally dropping the mask. He handles billion-dollar commercial properties, Josh. I was going to land his entire portfolio. That commission was going to secure my early retirement. And now, Charles won't even return my calls. You threw a tantrum over a place card and tanked my career trajectory. I let out a slow, dry laugh. There it was. The ultimate twist of my older brother. He wasn't calling to keep the peace. He wasn't calling to heal the family. He was calling because his networking opportunity had dried up. To Carter, the family was just a ladder to climb, and my pain was just an obstacle in his way. You know what, Carter? I said, leaning back on my couch. You and Mason truly deserve each other. Good luck with your portfolio. I hung up the phone and blocked his number. 2 nights later, at 11:30 p.m., my phone buzzed again. It was Mason. I almost ignored it, but morbid curiosity won out. I hit accept. Josh. Mason's voice was slurred, thick with alcohol and panic. I could hear traffic in the background. He was walking somewhere outside. What do you want, Mason? She's talking about a divorce, Josh. Mason choked out. He sounded completely broken. Chloe hasn't spoken to me in 5 days. Charles's lawyers sent a letter to my firm today asking for an annulment. My managing partner called me into his office. He said I brought a scandal to the firm's doorstep. I felt a brief flicker of pity, but I immediately stamped it out. Actions have consequences, Mason. You don't understand, he yelled, his voice cracking. It wasn't just about the aesthetic. I needed that $10,000 check, Joshua. I needed it desperately. I sat up straight. What are you talking about? The wedding, Mason sobbed, the truth finally spilling out of him. Charles paid for the venue and the food, but I had to pay for the rehearsal dinner, the groomsmen gifts, the custom suits, the honeymoon. I wanted to look like I belonged in their world. I maxed out 3 credit cards, Josh. I'm $50,000 in debt. I took out a high-interest personal loan just to buy Chloe's ring. The golden boy, the hotshot corporate lawyer who looked down his nose at my public school salary. He was a complete fraud. He was drowning in debt just to maintain a fake image. I was banking on your gift, Josh, Mason cried. I knew you were saving up. Mom told me you were going to give us 10 grand. I needed that cash to pay off the personal loan before the honeymoon, so Chloe wouldn't find out my bank accounts are overdrawn. When you took that envelope off the table, you didn't just insult me. You bankrupted me. I sat in stunned silence. The absolute audacity of it. He needed my money to save his financial life, yet he still couldn't resist the urge to humiliate me and feed me cheap chicken in a back corner. His ego was so massive, so unchecked, that he truly believed he could abuse me and still collect my money as a tribute. Mason, I said, my voice ice cold. You are 31 years old. You made your choices. If you had treated me like a brother, you would have had your money. But you treated me like trash. So now you can deal with the debt collectors on your own. Josh, please. You're my brother. They're going to ruin me. You ruined yourself, I said. Don't call this number again. I'm treating you exactly the way you treated me. Like a non-priority. I ended the call and blocked his number too. The toxicity was finally severed. A week passed. The silence in my life was golden. I was pouring all my energy into my students at the high school, feeling more present and focused than I had in years. One afternoon, I was sitting in my office reviewing college applications when my cell phone rang. It was an unfamiliar, out-of-state number. Hello, Joshua speaking. Joshua, this is Charles, Chloe's father. My stomach did a quick flip. I had never actually spoken to the man directly. His voice was deep, authoritative, and carried the weight of a man used to running empires. Hello, sir, I said cautiously. If this is about Mason, it's not about Mason, Charles interrupted smoothly. Mason is currently dealing with my legal team regarding the annulment. My daughter is a smart girl. She recognized a sinking ship when she saw the emails you provided. A man who lies to his own blood, hides them in a corner, and smiles for the camera is a man who will eventually betray his wife. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I'm sorry Chloe had to go through this. Don't apologize for exposing a fraud, son, Charles said firmly. I actually called to apologize to you. I saw you sitting at that back table at the rehearsal dinner. I asked your mother about it and she lied to my face. I should have trusted my gut. I raised my daughter to value integrity over inheritance, and your family severely lacked it. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. You walked into a room full of people who thought they were better than you, and you refused to let them strip you of your dignity, Charles continued. You took your power back. In my line of business, I meet a lot of men with big bank accounts and no spine. It's rare to find a man who stands his ground when it costs him something. You have my respect, Joshua. He paused for a moment. If you ever decide to leave the education sector and want to transition into corporate human resources or psychology consulting, you call my office. I always have a place for people with a backbone. I love my students, Charles, but I'm honored by the offer. We said our goodbyes. I set the phone down on my desk. Charles, a billionaire titan of industry, had seen my worth in 5 minutes, while my own family couldn't see it in 3 decades. I didn't need his job offer. Just hearing the validation was enough to permanently heal the wound my mother had inflicted. 3 months went by. The leaves turned brown and fell from the trees. My life settled into a beautiful, peaceful rhythm. One Tuesday, I checked my mail and found a plain white envelope. The handwriting was shaky, but familiar. It was from my father, Robert. I sat at my kitchen table, opened the envelope, and unfolded a piece of yellow legal pad paper. Joshua, I know you asked us not to contact you. I am not writing this to ask for forgiveness, because I haven't earned it. I am writing this to tell you that you were right. For 30 years, I stood by and watched Eleanor systematically break you down to build Carter and Mason up. I told myself I was just keeping the peace. I told myself it was easier not to argue with her. But sitting in that dining room, watching you drop those emails on the table, I realized my silence wasn't keeping the peace. My silence was complicity. It was cowardice. You should know the fallout has been severe. Mason's annulment went through. His firm let him go after rumors about his financial instability, and Charles's anger spread. He had to sell his condo to avoid bankruptcy. Carter hasn't spoken to your mother in 2 months because he blames her for losing his connection to Charles's firm. As for Eleanor, her social circle completely abandoned her. Your Aunt Sarah and Uncle Wyatt saw the emails after Chloe's mother forwarded them to the country club board. Eleanor is treating this house like a funeral home. She refuses to accept that she did anything wrong. She says you ruined her life. But I see the truth now. I have moved into an apartment across town. I filed for divorce last week. I also started seeing a therapist. I am trying to figure out how a man lets his own son be treated like a stray dog for 30 years. You were the strongest one among us, Joshua. You broke the cycle. I am incredibly proud of the man you are. I hope one day, years from now, you might let me buy you a cup of coffee. Until then, I wish you a beautiful life. Dad. I read the letter twice. I didn't cry. I felt a profound sense of closure. The house of cards had completely collapsed. My father was finally taking accountability. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. The universe has a funny way of rewarding you when you finally clear the toxic waste out of your life. The following week, I was called into the principal's office at my high school. Gabriel, the principal, was sitting behind his desk with a thick folder. Elijah, my best friend, was standing by the window grinning from ear to ear. Joshua, sit down, Gabriel said warmly. As you know, our head of counseling is retiring at the end of the semester. We conducted a nationwide search for a replacement. But Elijah here came into my office and threatened to chain himself to my desk if I didn't look at your internal file. I shot Elijah a look. He just winked. Your track record with our at-risk students is phenomenal, Gabriel continued. You have a gift for making invisible people feel seen. The school board voted unanimously last night. We want to offer you the promotion to head of counseling. It comes with a new office, a dedicated staff, and a significant bump in your salary. He pushed a contract across the desk. I looked down at the numbers. It wasn't corporate lawyer money, but it was more than enough to live comfortably and securely. It was honest money, earned through integrity and hard work. I signed the contract right there on the desk. That night, Elijah and I went out to celebrate. We ordered huge steaks and laughed until our ribs hurt. When I got home, I logged onto my banking app. I looked at my savings account. The $10,000 I had pulled back from Mason's wedding was sitting there, gathering interest. It wasn't a wedding gift anymore. It was my college fund. Next fall, I was officially enrolling in a doctoral program for educational psychology. I was investing in myself. I am sitting in my living room right now. It's a modest apartment, but it's filled with light, plants, and peace. I open the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside, resting next to my father's handwritten letter, is the cream-colored, gold-embossed place card. Joshua, non-priority guest. I pick it up and look at it. It doesn't hurt anymore. It doesn't make my chest tight. It just looks like a ridiculous piece of fiction written by people who never actually knew me. I look up from the card to the wall above my desk. Hanging there, in a beautiful mahogany frame, is my new contract and the brass nameplate Gabriel gave me. Joshua Ashford, Head of Counseling. I keep the place card not as a reminder of my trauma, but as a trophy of my escape. It is the physical proof of the exact moment I stopped waiting for a seat at someone else's toxic table and decided to build my own. My family tried to bury me in the dark, but they didn't realize I was a seed. Thank you for sticking around and listening to my story. I know it was a heavy one, but getting it out into the world feels like the final step in closing that dark chapter of my life. I hope this resonated with you in some way, especially if you've ever felt like the invisible person in your own family. Have you ever found yourself in a similar situation? Have you ever had to walk away from people who shared your blood but didn't share your values? I read every single comment, and I would be honored to hear your stories below. And for those of you who made it to the very end, the true listeners, I have a special request. Comment the letter W down below. W stands for winner. That is our secret code for the 1% Club. It's the sign that you didn't just hear the drama, but you stayed for the healing and the victory. It lets me know who my real community is. If this story helped you, or if you just want to support the channel, please hit that like button and follow for more stories. Remember, nobody else gets to print your label. You determine your own priority. I'll see you in the next video. Stay strong.